Joining us now, former litigator and MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin from outside the courthouse in New York City. Federal criminal defense attorney Caroline Polisi joins us as well. She's a lecturer at Columbia Law School, and MSNBC political analyst Elise Jordan is with us as well. Lisa, we'll start with you. Tell us what you expect to hear today, what you'll be looking for.
Well, Mika, one of the things I'm really looking for is how quickly Judge Juan Merchan gets to the question of when this trial is going to take place. Because former President Trump's motion here wasn't just for an adjournment. It was for a dismissal of the entire indictment on the theory that because the Southern District of New York, an arm of the Department of Justice, responded to his subpoena with documents that he had never before been provided, that somehow is proof positive that the Manhattan District Attorney's Office has engaged in what would be called discovery misconduct. And as a result of that, the whole case should go. I don't expect the judge to have much tolerance for that argument, but depending on how long that argument goes, that should tell you how seriously he's taking it, or whether he cuts it to the quick and we have a real quick and dirty argument about when this trial should start, Mika.
All right, Caroline Polisi, same question to you. What will you be looking for? And also, in terms of the bond issue, since you have some specialty in regulatory investigations and commercial litigation, I'm curious if it gives you any insight into what the best option for Trump would be in terms of making that bond.
Yeah, so first question on the trial today with Judge Merchan. Barring the unlikely scenario that there is sort of a smoking gun information document in what I'm going to call in the federal system we call Brady material, which is information that the defendant is sort of constitutionally bound to receive by the prosecution, I think this is going to be a blip on the radar screen. I don't think Judge Merchan is going to kick the trial date back past mid-April where it's scheduled to now. I think that there are reasons to have this hearing. The defense, as a defense attorney, you can't just sort of take the government's word for it that here are tens of thousands of documents, but only about 270 of them are relevant. And by the way, we think the overwhelming majority is inculpatory, meaning duplicative of the information we've already given you. So I do think Judge Merchan does need to get to the bottom of this. This argument that the SDNY and the DA's office was somehow colluding is laughable if you sort of know the history of those two offices' relationships. The Southern District of New York notoriously does sort of not play well in the sandbox with other prosecutorial bodies. And so the idea that they would be colluding with, Alvin Bragg's office is sort of laughable. Nonetheless, we'll see what happens. On the bond issue, I know you played the clip about the potential for Trump filing for bankruptcy. I'm sort of the camp that is just will never happen. Savvy commercial litigators and sort of people that are in the business understand that filing for bankruptcy is not sort of what it sort of colloquially means, and that sometimes it can be an important thing to do, and in a vacuum maybe I would say to do that in this case for the bond, but Trump's just never going to file for bankruptcy. I think he'll be able to cobble together the bond.
He has before.
Yeah,
he has before, but of course now he's in the middle of a presidential campaign. So, Lisa, a couple things to you. First, let's just say the trial does get a go-ahead where you were in today, and it does happen in April. How long do you think that trial will last? And, will we get a verdict ahead of voters going to the polls? And let's get your sense here. If the bond doesn't appear, do you think the Attorney General of the state of New York, Mr. James, is going to start seizing his assets in the days ahead?
Well, let's start with the trial, John. So the district attorney has told Judge Merchan that he expects the trial to last 4 to 6 weeks, and that's inclusive of jury selection. However, having attended 3 Trump trials in the last 12 months alone, I can tell you that these things always take longer because his attorneys are specialists in the Trump MO, which is delay, delay, delay. So I do expect that we would have a verdict, for example, before the political conventions. But do I expect that the trial will last 4 to 6 weeks necessarily? No. Let's go back to the bond, though, because Caroline said something that I really want to amplify about bankruptcy. There are other reasons that I think Trump won't file for bankruptcy beyond his own pride. One of them is if he were to declare bankruptcy, there is a likelihood that he would plunge many of his existing loan agreements into default. And the amount that his lenders could collect if there were events of default under his outstanding lending agreements could be far in excess of the totality of what the Attorney General's office believes is necessary for a bond. But there's one other reason, and that's the concept of joint and several liability. So I hate to take our viewers to law school right now, but the judgment that Judge Arthur Engoron entered with respect to that civil fraud case holds Trump and a number of business entities jointly and severally liable for the judgment. And what that essentially means is that Trump can't escape that judgment simply by putting a number of business entities into bankruptcy, nor can he escape by putting himself into personal bankruptcy. He would have to do both of them at once to halt any further litigation and enforcement efforts. And if you think Donald Trump is both going to declare himself personally bankrupt and then have a number of entities subsidiary to the Trump organization and the Trump organization itself in bankruptcy, I think you've got another thing coming. My suspicion is that he will cobble together money from a variety of sources to post a bond, but it won't necessarily be today. And that also means that although Tish James can start some enforcement efforts as soon as today, or even sooner, really, there was nothing stopping her. That doesn't mean that a few days from now, we won't see Trump post a bond to stay enforcement of that judgment as he sees the judgment through the appeal.